only thing you should focus on is getting work. Like nothing else really matters. You'll figure out how to do it, just get the work. And then I remember a good friend of mine is in private equity and basically told me the same thing. He's like, you're small, you should just solely focus on growth. That's the most important thing you have, like sales, 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 sales. And so, yeah, I basically, like you said, I did that. I tried to offload the operational stuff that I could. And, I was fully focused on sales. So
today, I'm speaking with Steve Simpson, broker-owner of Central Florida Property Management based out of Orlando, Florida. Steve has grown his property management business to 1,000 doors under management and has a lot of experience in terms of what he did to actually get to that door count, what the path was to get there as well. He has an interesting background because he started as a CPA and eventually transitioned to property management after taking a stab as a real estate agent. So without further ado, let's get to Steve so you can start to learn from his experience and hear his story. Steve, thanks so much for joining me today. To kick things off, can you tell everybody a little bit about your experience, your background, and how you ended up getting into property management?
Sure. Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. So after college, I went into public accounting. So I guess I'm technically still a CPA. I'm a CPA by trade. In 2008, 2009, the real estate market just took a dump, especially down here. Prices dropped crazy. So just from growing up down here, I knew a lot of people that basically started investing in buying residential properties. And I guess just through kind of the grapevine, I pseudo volunteered and pseudo got told that I was the one that was going to be managing these properties. I had some small interest in some of these. So yeah, I basically just started off with a very small portfolio, like 2, 3, 4, 5 houses. And once I was about that size, it kind of occurred to me that I probably should get bigger because that's kind of a tough spot to be. So I started putting out bandit signs. Literally, I drive around on Friday nights with bandit signs, just property management with my phone number on it. Got a few clients that way. This time I was still working at the CPA firm. So I knew I always wanted to go off on my own. So I had a few decent sized real estate deals, was able to kind of build up some kind of cash pile. And at the same time, I read Gary Keller's book, How to Be a Millionaire the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. So I decided that sounds great. This sounds pretty easy way to make a ton of money. So I went into being a real estate agent full time. So I quit my accounting job, go join a real estate brokerage. And it took maybe 6 months to realize I'm not super really into this. There's stuff about that whole business I didn't really like a lot. I guess the big kicker to me, it seemed like getting work in that business was rather challenging. You had to do a lot of personal networking, and just because of my age and stuff, I didn't know a lot of people with houses. But I realized in the property management side, it was a lot easier to get business from people that you didn't know. So I was like, okay, and I'm a pretty organized guy, the CPA stuff. So I kind of just take a pivot into that route. I just kind of changed my focus, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to try to grow this thing as big as I can, basically, or as I put all my effort into that. So I think when I left the accounting firm to go to the real estate office, I think I had maybe 9 or 10 properties under management. After about a year, I think I had 16, 17. And then it just so happened that the marketing coordinator at my real estate brokerage was big into SEO. This is 2008, 2009. No, this is 2014. And at the time, that was still kind of I guess not normal. I don't know. It was very junior in the industry, right? So I talked to her and we kind of sit down and she goes over all this SEO stuff and I'm like, yeah, this sounds great. And so I basically start paying her on an hourly basis to help me grow my SEO stuff with the property management company. And it just took off. I think I really got lucky in that. I think I just through just dumb luck, basically, no fault or no benefit for what I did. The time that I got into it, the market, the property management industry was changing from a referral based industry into a search engine generated industry. So before, I remember talking to guys who were before me, they would basically spend all their time networking with realtors to get work. Whereas I just basically focused all on the online stuff. I was working on reputation management, SEO stuff, Yelp reviews, all this sort of stuff. So basically we go from I think I had 16, 17 doors, and the next year, I think I added 50 doors, which is pretty crazy, right? So yeah, to make a very long story short, so we've been really after this since 2014. It's obviously 11 years now. We're right around 1,000 doors, about 20 employees, 6 are remote, and then 14 are in office. Yeah, we pretty much manage everywhere in the Central Florida market. Our kind of mindset is if we can drive there in an hour or less from downtown Orlando, we'll pretty much handle it. And yeah, that's kind of my story in a very condensed nutshell.
Hey, quick break from the interview just for a second. If you're listening to this podcast, there's a good chance you're looking to grow your property management business. Our team at Upkeep Media is offering a free property management lead generation session to all podcast listeners. Just visit our website at upkeepmedia.com/growth, fill out the form on that page, enter the coupon code PODCAST, and you'll sign up for a free property management lead gen session. A team member will reach out to you at the time that you book. During that call, we'll show you what your top local competitors are doing to bring on new properties to manage. We'll take a look at where you're currently positioned online and then give you actionable strategies that you can use to grow your property management business. Just visit upkeepmedia.com/growth, fill out the form on that page, and we'll speak with you soon. All right, let's get back to the interview. Obviously, you were one of the, we'll call it first movers. You were able to recognize that the internet was a good place to be able to grow your property management business at a time where it was maybe looked at as like black magic or something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
So you had, let's say, a first mover advantage for sure. You were able to grow up pretty quickly. So going from like 16 to around, you said you grew by about 50 doors the next year. What challenges would you say you faced specifically in your first 100 doors? Like, was the focus just grow at all costs, or was it, okay, we grew to 50 doors and now we're having operational challenges? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the first part of it, I think like starting any business, when you're wearing every single hat, there's just a lot going on, right? So, I mean, I was managing the properties myself. I mean, doing literally everything, listings, going to showings. I was doing all the financial reporting and sending out the statements and processing payments and doing literally everything. I guess with the exception to a degree of like the SEO stuff. So yeah, that was by far the hardest part. I mean, just because there's just so much to do as a one-man show. So I think I hired a part-time assistant that I found on Craigslist, I think at like maybe right around 20 doors. That helped. It helped tremendously, like just to kind of buy back, call it 20 hours of my time every week was like very, very beneficial at that point. After about that first year, where I think I said I added 50 doors, I would track everything, right? So I would track all the leads that were coming in, our conversion rate, where the properties were, all that sort of stuff. So I had a pretty good feeling of like, I was fairly confident that was going to continue, right? And I remember when I first sat down with Brittany, that was the girl that was the marketing coordinator. At the time she was like, yeah, I think we can get you like top first page in like 6 months, which I think now is like, going from 0 to first page of 6 months is probably pretty hard. But back then, not everyone was doing it. And they weren't really focusing on it. So I think the fact that we had like intention behind doing it really helped a lot. So it gave us this very predictable growth pattern, which I think gave me the confidence to basically be like, okay, well, I can kind of work backwards on this. I know what our average, revenue per door is, what our annual revenue per door is going to be. And then I know I can afford to pay someone. So I think we had about, I'm trying to think how many doors we had. It was under 100. When I added my first employee, my first full-time guy, kind of small world, but my wife is a nurse practitioner and her doctor had his house renovated, and I guess he met this guy and he was like, yeah, there's this guy, he seems like a really good dude, like just very sharp, hardworking. I know he's getting into real estate. Maybe you want to just like talk with him. So he grabbed a beer and I kind of like just told him what we were doing. And he's like, yeah, I'm in. So I hired him, still works for me today. And basically I spent even more time having to train him how to do all this sort of stuff. And I just kind of slowly gave him more responsibility. And then I would kind of keep doing that where I would like offload responsibility of the like actual property management side of things. And I would still handle new business development, the bookkeeping aspect of it, making sure our, the advertising and marketing SEO stuff is kind of working, focusing all on that. And I would just basically kind of rinse and repeat and did that. And I think we basically went from the first year, I think we added about 50 doors till after that. We pretty much add at least 100 doors a year gross, and probably even over 100 doors a year net for a while. So I basically would just, get to like kind of peak capacity and like hire a new person and kind of just kind of keep on going. I know I kind of went off on a tangent there. To answer your question though, the hardest part for sure is how to like manage that much growth operationally at the time when you're only a one man kind of show.
For sure. So how are you choosing what to hand off versus what to keep? Because it sounds like, and this is generally what I would recommend as long as you have the ability, it sounds like your main focuses were anything related to growth. So doing the new business development, focusing on marketing. And then you mentioned the accounting, which I think is a natural fit considering your background. And then it sounds like operations is where you were like, okay, this is the first place I'm going to get out of. Is that kind of what the mindset was?
100%. Yeah, 100%. So I had not like really mentors, but so a fraternity brother of mine had started a HVAC engineering business in New York, and I remember having a call with him. This was like very early on, and he gave me some of the best advice I've ever gotten. He was like, "Listen, it's like Steve, you're a smart guy. Like you'll figure out how to do the work. The only thing you should focus on is getting work. Like nothing else really matters. You'll figure out how to do it. Just get the work." And then I remember a good friend of mine is in private equity and basically told me the same thing. He's like, you're small, you should just solely focus on growth. That's the most important thing you have, like sales, 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 sales. And so, yeah, I basically, like you said, I did that. I tried to offload the operational stuff that I could. And, I was fully focused on sales. So, if someone called in and they were a prospect, like no matter what else I was doing, I was putting that aside and I was talking to them. And yeah, like kind of like you mentioned, the just super focused on growth in terms of like the way I would kind of, I guess, go about doing it would be I'd handle the new business calls, like all the business development stuff. Once they were signed on, I'd make sure the property's good to go in terms of like I'm using any work done, getting all the photos, getting it listed, everything to where it's like, from zero to it's listed on the market. And then I would pass it off to my employee to basically handle the actual leasing of it and then take it from there. So yeah, I basically tried to focus on stuff that I thought in the long run would be the most valuable. The accounting piece, I think, was just because like at the time it was rather expensive to have to pay someone to do accounting. And so I wanted to run very, I'm an accountant, like I'm pretty conservative, right? So I wanted to run as lean as possible. I was way more comfortable working a ton and not having to like a payment, a potential like anchor attached to the business. So I have to make payroll on this guy. So really throughout our whole growth, I think one of the hardest things just in this business is to like figure out, you don't want to overstaff, you don't want to understaff. And especially when you're that size, I would just we would be way understaffed. I would just make up for it until we hit like, all right, we definitely have enough money coming in to pay a new person. Then I would hire them and rinse and repeat.
Yep. It was bootstrapped. And
Right.
I will say, not every single time, but probably about 90% of the time where I hear of or work with a company that has reached that 1,000 door mark, it's a very similar trajectory where it's what we call like founder-led sales. And that was the main thing they were focused on. They handed off all the operations, and day in, day out, it was like, how do we get more business? And then I find people that can help service that business. And that's generally what I recommend. It's very rare that I see a company at 100 doors and they hire a BDM and everything goes amazing. Now, there's obviously exceptions and it can be done. But if you are a founder that has the ability to sell, I think generally that's going to be kind of your superpower while you're, let's say, at a smaller door count, because you can focus on the time and the energy to do that. Once you continue to scale up, eventually you might need to get more people in so that they can handle all of the leads, because at a certain point it can become, let's say, too much for one person. But especially, let's say, from like that 100 to 400, 500 door mark, that's usually where founder-led sales seems to help businesses grow the fastest.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think anyone's going to be as hungry as you are. And I think there's it takes a lot of time for sure. You learn a lot of stuff. You learn a lot about what clients you don't want to take on, the ones you do want to take on, the way to just look at a lot of different, just I guess stuff kind of coming at you. Yeah, I think I probably handled the vast majority of our BDM work probably until we hit, probably around 500-600 doors. I remember my first child was born in 2021, and I remember being like, all right, I probably need to figure out because the stuff with sales is that it's just funny. I remember my wife would always joke about that, like I'd be crazy, crazy, crazy busy, and then I'd be like dead. So like, for example, and I'm sure everyone, if they're on property management, know this with leads, you never know when these leads are going to hit, right? So I think I saw some stat, like the average lead would like convert. It was like 65 days or something after the initial contact. Yeah. So it's like, you've got all these kind of irons in the fire, and the next thing you know, they all convert, and then you have to onboard all of them. And it just goes from like, oh my gosh, 1 week you've got like 8 new business coming on. You got all this stuff to do. So I remember when my wife was pregnant, I was like, well, this isn't going to work if like this baby's like 1 week old. And I'm like, hey, I got 10 10 stuff I got to drive all around town. So I started transitioning at that point. But yeah, I think up until then, I did the vast majority of the BDM stuff. I think I would only not do it if I was on vacation or something, or I honestly can't even remember. It was probably like 95% of the doors I was bringing in.
I think an advantage to that also is when you do bring somebody in, you know the exact process you want them to follow for the sales for the sales process, right? Whereas if you don't have that dialed in, you're basically hiring somebody and banking on the fact that they're going to be able to figure it out and they're going to be organized enough to really sell, to figure out the sales process. But the truth is, most people that are really good at sales want to just sell. They don't want to be setting up a CRM and figuring out exactly what the follow-up process should be. The best salespeople, they want to wake up, they're in sales calls all day, they're following up with leads all day. They're not going in and figuring out how do I get my CRM to send an automated message.
Right.
So I think there's definitely advantages to that. So in terms of lead flow, you mentioned SEO has been a big component of helping you guys grow. Have you done any other strategies that have helped bring in leads, or is it really just at this point been primarily through your website, through SEO?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I would think it's got to be over 95% of our leads come from SEO. I think we were blessed that we had so much lead flow. It's kind of a blessing and a curse. We didn't have to focus on anything else, right? So like we had enough leads coming in and our conversion rate was good enough to where realistically, at least at my capability at that point, or like my risk tolerance, stuff like that, if we had grown much faster, again, I'm a pretty organized kind of person. Like my brain would have exploded if we had grown a whole lot faster than that. So we really had no reason to go out and kind of find other sources for leads because we were getting just so many through the SEO channel. And I think it's a combo of the SEO and the reputation management. I feel like I was pretty also early on that, just in terms of like being deliberate about getting a ranking or a review on Google or Yelp. Like I remember like thinking that was like a secret that I would keep because like I wouldn't tell anybody about it because it was kind of just so easy in a way. Like I remember before maybe when I had Brittany, I took this, I did like a little crash course. I think the company was called Get the Clicks. They were local in Orlando. And they had like a, month, like this is a month what you should be doing every day. Like the sixth thing was like get one Yelp review. And I was like, okay. So I think I asked my buddy from high school to give me a Yelp review. And maybe I got one more or something. And within like a month or two, I started getting calls from Yelp. And I was like, what? And so I go on there and I think I was like the number 2 ranked property management company in Orlando with 2 Yelp reviews. Wow. And I was like, holy crap, right? So I was like, this is like a big deal. So focused on that. And then as I kind of felt like Yelp was kind of cooling down, kind of changed on the Google side of things. But I remember when everyone started really focusing on that, I think I'd been doing it for like 3 or 4 years. And it really wasn't, again, it was kind of dumb luck that it just worked out that way. I just took this class, I had to do something, I noticed it worked and I kept doing it. It wasn't like anything, I wasn't splitting the atom or anything.
Give yourself some credit. I think you had the foresight. Maybe you don't always know how everything's going to turn out, but you at least had the rationale to be like, I think this could be something that's going to make a lot of sense and will continue to grow and help us grow. So I know you keep saying dumb luck, but you don't get to 1,000 doors off dumb luck. So I'll give you the credit, but I understand if you're too humble to say it. So right now you mentioned you have a pretty big team. Like what are the roles of different team members? Like what positions do you have hired for? And I guess at this point, like what's your day-to-day like in the business?
Sure. So yeah, we're kind of transitioning into what I call like a reverse pod. We're primarily portfolio based, but we're stacking an assistant property manager to handle 2 PMs. So every PM has a half an assistant basically. So we're portfolio based primarily again with the assistant component, which I know is I feel like it's super out of style right now, which is fine. Like I don't mind kind of going against the grain. I think there's tons of advantages to the portfolio method, especially in terms of like converting clients. And we actually have our PMs do BDM work as well, which has worked out fantastically. And I think kind of to your point, people wanting to sell, like we don't have salespeople. But what we do have is that basically if someone calls in, we figure out where their property is, and then we give it to the person that will be managing it to convert that lead. And what happens, I've never actually talked to someone about this, but what I think is happening is that a couple of things. One is that they call in, they can talk to a person right away, they like that. And the second part is they're talking to the person that they know is going to be handling the property. And I think we've all had situations where we bought something and maybe we liked the guy that was selling it to us, but then when we actually worked with the person that was doing the service, maybe we weren't as crazy about them. And so the fact that like they call in and they're talking to this guy and they're like, wait, so who am I gonna be dealing with? Like, you're dealing with me. So if they get like a good vibe going, like it's a pretty easy sell, right? And you also have some other benefits there where like you don't have the salesperson over promising something. You don't have the salesperson, there's plenty of bad clients out there. We don't really want them. So the person most incentivized to keep bad clients out is the person that's going to be working on them. So we don't have a lot of situations where like the PM is bringing on crazy people because they know if they bring them on, they're gonna have to deal with them for indefinitely. So they kind of steer away from that.
When you're hiring a PM, are you also kind of gauging their sales skills since they're
Not,
actually gonna, or
not
is it just
really.
kind of like a look? They're easy to get along with. I think people in general would get along with them. Is it more of that? Because
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm a very good salesperson. I think I'm pretty organized, and I can, like what you were talking about with the CRM, like I can set up my thing so I know I'm following up every so often, and I will just keep doing it and telling myself, yeah, this guy hasn't responded 20 times, but it takes me 5 seconds to do the 21st, so I may as well do it. And I think I know what I'm talking about, and so I think a lot of people, if you can kind of, they don't. Most people that are buying our service know less than we know. And if what they're really buying is like the peace of mind that someone that knows what they're doing is handling their property. So if you can kind of convey through conversation that you know what you're talking about, that's from my experience, all that goes a far way, right? So with our PMs, we have general guidelines for how often they need to follow up, like how they should follow up. We have like a centralized CRM through our Monday platform where we can kind of track what's going on. But we basically just rely on the fact that they know what they're doing, and that we want that to come across via a conversation with somebody. And we don't give them leads until we know they know what they're doing, basically. So we bring someone on, whether or not they have experience or not, until we feel like, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about, and he can like articulate that to somebody else. Like, we're not going to give them any sales leads. But once they know it, yeah, we're just like, here, go do your thing. And obviously we pay them commissions and stuff like that to bring stuff on. So they have an incentive to do it. Yeah, so we tried the BDM thing for about a year, and it might have been a wrong person, wrong seat sort of thing, but I just didn't think it. I don't know. I didn't think it worked as well. And I think we've got 9 PMs. I would say one of them is probably not super great at converting these things, but the rest of them convert pretty well. And it's not, we've got a whole other sort of issue in terms of like where the leads are coming in from, or where the properties are that are coming in. But in terms of like conversion rate, everyone is fairly close to each other. It's not like someone is just, tonning it all the time and the other guys are not doing a very good job.
there's not one closing 50% and the rest are closing like 5. It's
Right. Yeah.
more or less.
It's fairly flat. Yeah. Especially if you look on a percentage base, and then when we're running that data, we do like actual, or we do like total conversion rate, and we do what we call like a real conversion rate, where we're backing out people that probably were not ever, they didn't hire the service, or they didn't do anything with the property. Maybe they're just fishing for rates, or they don't know what to do with their house. They're kind of calling along. They're probably not actually going to use it. So backing out all that sort of stuff, we focus on that a lot because those are ones we think actually had a chance of converting, basically. Yeah.
Okay. What is your follow-up process? Like you mentioned following up the 21st time. Like how many times are your property managers following up with leads? Is it all automated? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think at this juncture, we're probably not following up as much as I probably would like. And maybe that's one of the downsides of having the PMs do it, is that they've got a lot going on. So like, following up with some guy that's super, just not getting back to you is maybe not super high on their priority list. And then the other, I guess, kind of downside of that is that, kind of like I was talking about before, if they're getting 50 leads for a year and like 10 or 15 of them are fairly easy conversions where like the person's very engaging and stuff like that, they may not have the bandwidth to handle the ones that are kind of like the longer tail ones. Yeah, I mean, I guess to kind of answer your question more broadly, I kind of do like a diminishing, my thought process is like a diminishing follow-up sort of deal, right? So depending on if you get them on a call the first go around, our thought process is always, okay, get them on a phone call, and then if you can, meet them in person, or if not, at least get access to the property so we can like kind of talk about that stuff, to where we've always found if you get in front of somebody, your conversion rate is crazy. It's something like 80% or something like that, right? So we try to do that. And, if they're emailing in, again, we're trying to get them on a phone call. Maybe we send them, an email every day for 3 or 4 days, and then maybe every other day for a week, and then every third. So you're kind of scaling it off where you don't want to like annoy people. But yeah, I mean, I guess
But that
again,
still
I
is
guess
a pretty aggressive follow-up.
oh, for sure.
Which
Yeah.
I agree with. I'm all for it, but I would
Yeah,
say,
no, for sure. I think and I forget where I even read this or who told me this, but like, it seems like I've heard a lot of people do not do a great job of following up. And like I mentioned, I don't think I'm a very good salesperson, but I will be very detailed. I will keep records of like when I'm following up with people and what I said and all that sort of stuff. So all I have to do is just follow up. And my mindset's always like, very inexpensive to follow up with somebody, whether it's on a phone call, an email, whatever it is. I mean, the worst case is they basically, cuss you out, tell you to stop bothering them, which has happened for sure. But I'm like, whatever. I do that 200 times. I get cussed out a couple times. Like, who cares?
yeah.
Yeah, I think follow up is you cannot understate or overstate how important the follow up part of it is. And I think a lot of people don't do it probably because they're not organized enough or because they're afraid that someone's going to say something mean to them. That's my theory. I don't know. But yeah, we definitely stress follow up for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think it's both factors. You have some people that are just not organized, and then you also have companies where they're scared they're going to annoy them. But the truth is, they reached out to you. So don't worry about annoying them because they reached out to you and then they never told you yes or no. So you're just trying to find out.
Right.
That's the way. Which, and yeah, you'll have the occasional person that's like, stop bothering me. But okay, you'll stop bothering them when they tell you.
Yeah, exactly. We even have like what we call a leave me alone email. So like it's something like if they haven't responded like in 20 emails or something, we'll just basically say, hey, I'm going to stop responding. I haven't heard back from you. We'd love to work with you. Please give us a shout if this is wrong. And that's like kind of our send off. And before that, we'll have like, don't mean to pester you, not trying to annoy you. So if you don't need our services anymore, just let us know. But we'll probably send that one like 5 times because I figure they could just say not interested. I'm like, okay, cool, let's move on. But
yeah, I'd say for anyone listening, what you just heard Steve say is your golden nugget of today. If you have leads and you are not following up consistently, I guarantee you're leaving money on the table. That's every business out there. At this point, like, what is your day-to-day like? So originally it was really all focused on growth. Like at this point, it sounds like your PMs are basically doing most of the sales. What are you focused on?
yeah, yeah, it's kind of all over the place. So I just hired an executive assistant. So I have a decent amount of like admin stuff that I probably should not be doing. I know I shouldn't be doing. It's not a good use of my time. So I'm trying to like train my executive assistant on how to do that sort of stuff and really get him to a point where like I can rely on them to do a lot of the kind of stuff that always comes up that just it has to get done, but maybe it's not the best use of my time. So my time currently is training a lot on that. It's just like how to do all this sort of stuff, and they don't have any experience in the industry, so it's kind of a big learning curve. Aside from that, I guess before I started training them, it would be, kind of things getting escalated to me, whether it's for owners or tenants, trying to do networking to try to maybe find acquisition partners, basically trying to meet people that might want to sell their business. We are, at least the way I've been taught is to track churn on a percentage basis, right? So you can assume, 10% of your doors are going to leave every year, right? Well, for the most part, our gross doors added have been the same, fairly close, between 150 and 200 every year for the past like 4 or 5 years. Well, basically we're getting to the size where like that 10% that's going to churn out really makes our net growth slow down a lot. So the idea of doing acquisition is becoming more and more like enticing, just because it's just a big chunk we can get. But obviously the problem right now is that everyone's kind of thinking this. I mean, I get 6 emails a week about buying the company, so I'm not the only person doing that. So I'm trying to focus on networking and building relationships to where if someone wants to sell, they would allow me to buy the company. And then I spend a lot of time on like our operational processes. So I mentioned earlier, we've got a Monday.com build out that we did where we basically took all of our processes and put them in a Monday board. We used an open API through Buildium to do stuff. And so trying to like design those things and like teach everyone how to use them and stuff like that. I mean, it's been awesome. We've gotten so much more efficient, and like efficient and transparent, which from like my position is great. You can kind of see what's going on with everything. Not that I'm like a huge micromanager, but just in case, hey, is this person keeping up with the renewals, or what's our moving speed and all that sort of stuff. So kind of designing that and making sure it's working good. Meeting with team members to just kind of see how things are going. Obviously, kind of like teaching stuff. So people come to me with problems, and I kind of try to teach them what I've learned from doing this for a while. And so the goal would be again to get the executive assistant kind of up and running and focus more on kind of bigger picture stuff. Like we currently outsource all of our maintenance. I think there's potential that we should have a maintenance company because we obviously have enough doors where like we could support that, and that could be another profit center. But I just need to have time to be able to like do this sort of stuff. So I'm trying to basically free up my time so I can kind of level up and focus on things that are kind of more important.
I guess outside of the business, how do you invest your money right now? Is it all in real estate? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I was pretty heavy into real estate investing up until really, I guess, when 2021. So I think the last property I bought was in 2021. I remember my son was like 4 months old at the closing table. I wish I had kept investing in real estate. I got into like syndicated deals with kind of all kinds of stuff. Some of it's like tax strategies, but like syndicated both real estate deals, oil and gas development deals, just kind of like weird stuff. Basically because the interest rate and pricing and rental rate market was just so much worse than it had been when I was first buying stuff, right? Where basically like you're having to put way more money down to cash flow or maybe even just break even. And it seemed like the appreciation potential kind of hadn't run up and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think I'm going to get back into buying properties. Like my goal next year is to buy, one, maybe two properties. I've got a duplex that's like an old duplex that I think I'm going to scrape and then build a nice new duplex on it. Should almost 2x the rent coming in, and then there's some tax benefits to that and what have you. And I've got some money in the stock market, not like a ton, but I kind of just every month I put so much in and kind of just allocate it based on what I think looks good. And yeah, so I guess long and short of it, yeah, kind of all over the place. I I wish I had kept doing the real estate thing. I feel dumb for not doing it, especially because like I have a property management company. So I have like a huge piece of that everyone doesn't want to deal with. Like that's already covered for me. And it just seems silly that in hindsight, I wish I would have done it, but yeah, I'm going to get back on it.
Got it. So if you could go back in time to when you started your journey in property management, what would you say is the one thing that you would change that would have the biggest impact on helping you succeed at a faster pace, whatever success looks like to you?
Yeah, that's tricky, man. I think it kind of to zoom out on that. I think again, probably coming from a CPA background, I was pretty focused on like a cash flow sort of basis, basically maximizing cash flow more or less. And I think that worked out for it worked out in a lot of ways, right? Maybe one way it didn't work out is like instead of looking at the business as like a cash producing machine, if you want to call it that, to look at it from like the value of like a business, like what is the business itself worth like as an asset, right? So I'm looking at it as like a income producing thing versus like an asset. And I think if I had been focused more on the asset side of things, I probably would have taken more stuff off my plate quicker and earlier than I did. There's a great book called Buy Back Your Time, and he basically...
I have it on my shelf behind me.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I think it's a really good mindset to have where the idea is basically you should pay somebody to take stuff off your plate, and then you just focus on things that like will drive the most value for the company. And so I think in hindsight, again, it would have been riskier, which like I guess at the time I was not really interested in doing. But like if we had lower cash flow, but I had more time to kind of like focus on bigger things, I think we probably would be even bigger today, today than we are. But I guess on the flip side, it's like, who knows if that's true or not, right? That's just probably the one thing that if I had to do it again, I probably would tell myself, hey, you need to start like offloading stuff off of your plate earlier than you're doing, like just because it would just buy back so much of my time to be able to focus on bigger things.
Yeah. So what you're talking about, I believe, is the time and energy audit, where you basically will rank the tasks that you're doing based off the dollar value of it and the energy it takes you. And then from there, you slowly start unwinding tasks that are high energy and low dollar value.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
It works really well.
Yeah,
It's
and I just waited way too long. Like I was doing stuff that like, even we were at 500, 600, 700 doors, which is a pretty good sized company. I was still doing stuff that like I could pay a, relatively low wage admin person to do. I don't know. I don't know why I feel stupid for not doing that, but that's the number one thing I would change for sure.
Yeah, everything's always easier in hindsight. When you're in a position where the cash flow isn't as tight as it once was, it's easier to look back and be like, I shouldn't have worried so much. But when you're living it and the cash flow is tighter, at that point you're like, well, I have a family to feed. I have to think of that type of stuff. So, hindsight's 2020, right?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Steve, thank you so much for that's usually where founder-led sales seems to help businesses grow the fastest. With you, where would be the best place for them to reach out?
I guess just shoot me an email, ssimpson@cflpropmanagement.com, or if you go on our website, you can find our general email there, and happy to talk shop and all that sort of stuff.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steve.
Cool, man. Thanks, Steven.
All right.